Imagine you're walking down a dusty road in an ancient city over 4,000 years ago. The sun is shining hot on your back, and the streets are busy with merchants selling cloth and dates, children splashing in a nearby river, and farmers bringing their harvest to market. In the distance, a magnificent stone temple rises into the blue sky, and at its gates stands a tall, strong king with fierce eyes and golden robes. His name is Gilgamesh, and people say there's no one like him across the whole land of Mesopotamia. He's known all over the region for building great walls, going on incredible journeys, and making important discoveries. He's part human and part something even greater, a man of strength, wisdom, and leadership. You might think he sounds like a superhero from a storybook, but Gilgamesh was a real king. His story is one of the oldest ever written down, called the Epic of Gilgamesh. The Epic of Gilgamesh comes from a time long, long ago in a place called Mesopotamia. That name means the land between rivers in Greek, and it's where people lived near the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in what is now mostly Iraq. Mesopotamia is often called the cradle of civilization because it's where people first built cities, created writing, and formed governments thousands of years ago. One of those ancient cities was called Uruk. That's where Gilgamesh ruled as king around 2700 BCE, more than 4,700 years ago. Gilgamesh was a real king, but the stories about him became legendary and were passed down through generations. The Epic of Gilgamesh was written on clay tablets using a kind of writing called cuneiform. The tablets were buried or lost for centuries until they were discovered by archaeologists in the 1800s. The most complete version of the story was found in the ruins of an ancient library in Nineveh, a great Assyrian city. A scribe had copied the story onto 11 clay tablets in the Akkadian language. When experts finally learned how to read these ancient symbols, they realized they were looking at one of the earliest works of literature ever written. In the story, Gilgamesh is described as a powerful and energetic ruler. He was known for building the walls of Uruk, which surrounded the city and made it strong and safe. But the people of Uruk believed that Gilgamesh was too proud and too strict. So the gods, in the belief system people followed back then, created a friend for him named Enkidu. Enkidu began as a wild man living in the forests and grasslands, but eventually became more civilized and came to the city. Gilgamesh and Enkidu first challenged each other, but instead of staying enemies, they became the best of friends. They traveled together, sharing great adventures and learning from each experience. Their bond was strong and changed Gilgamesh in many ways. With Enkidu by his side, Gilgamesh discovered what it meant to be a true friend and a thoughtful leader. Together they visited distant lands, faced difficult trials, and made important decisions. Along the way they met new people, respected ancient traditions, and explored the limits of their strength. One of their greatest achievements was bringing back valuable wood from a distant forest to help build Uruk. They faced many obstacles, but returned to the city with honor and wisdom. However, the story takes a sad turn when Enkidu becomes very sick. Losing his friend teaches Gilgamesh a powerful lesson. He realizes that even the strongest leaders must face the realities of life. Overwhelmed with sadness and questions, Gilgamesh sets out on a long journey to find a wise man named Utnapishtim, who survived a great flood that once covered the earth, a tradition passed down by ancient Mesopotamians. Gilgamesh wanted to learn the secret of everlasting life so that he would never have to experience such loss again. His journey takes him far from Uruk, across deserts, mountains, and deep waters. Along the way, he meets people with knowledge, hears stories from the past, and begins to understand what it means to live well and wisely. When he finally meets Utnapishtim, Gilgamesh is told that eternal life is not meant for kings. Utnapishtim explains that instead of looking for ways to live forever, Gilgamesh should focus on doing good, helping others, and making his time on Earth meaningful. In the end, Gilgamesh returns to Uruk, tired but wiser. He looks up at the city walls that he helped build and understands that his true legacy is not being the strongest or living forever, but being remembered as someone who led his people, learned from friendship, and cared enough to change. The city of Uruk still stands tall in his eyes, a symbol of what humans can build and achieve when they work together. Even though Gilgamesh lived thousands of years ago, his story still teaches lessons that matter today. He shows us that being a good leader means listening, learning, and caring for others. He also reminds us that friendship can make us stronger, wiser, and more complete. While we may not live in ancient cities or write on clay tablets, we still ask some of the same big questions that Gilgamesh asked. How can we be remembered? What does it mean to live a good life? And how do we deal with sadness and change? The Epic of Gilgamesh may be one of the oldest stories ever written, but it's also one of the most human. Even across thousands of years, we can feel the emotions and experiences of someone who lived long ago. As Gilgamesh himself says in one part of the story, "I have looked over the wall, I have seen what has been done and what will be done again." His journey teaches us that even when life is full of challenges, our choices, actions, and relationships help shape the world around us.